Hello, my name is Jenna, and the educational philosopher I chose for this class was Robert Hutchins, and I chose him because of the year he was born. So he was born in 1899, and he lived through most of the 1900s, which is a century I find fascinating to study. When he was little, he would have seen the birth of the automobile. He probably wouldn't have remembered it because of how young he was, but he would have seen everything to the space shuttle. So there's just a lot of things that happen in the 1900s, both with advances in technology and also in conflicts. He would have seen both world wars, and just politically, just a lot happens. So I chose him, and he ended up being a lot more interesting than I thought he was going to be. He did not start out as a teacher. He actually started off as a soldier in the Great War, and then kind of needed a job for a little while after his undergrad, so he got into teaching. Realized teaching high school was not for him. He did not enjoy being a history high school teacher, so he went to law school. And at law school, they thought he was quite clever, and so they put him on the faculty of Yale Law School. Well, that got him noticed, and he rose through the ranks, so he became the dean in his 20s. Well, since he became the dean, people were looking at him a little bit, and the Chicago University actually asked him to be their president. So at the age of 30, he became the youngest president at the time to run a college. And when he got there, he was known for some controversial things. First being, he got rid of football, the varsity football team. And next, one of his big educational philosophies is secular prenatalism, which focuses on human nature and uses the great books, but he didn't necessarily believe them. He said there was use and there was value to them, but they might not have actually been true. But he believed a good start in education, you needed to study human nature and what kind of values can we teach. This brings us into another thing he believed in was liberal arts. Liberal arts schools, he believed, was important to have well-rounded kids. So you need to study everything from math, art, science, to history to really understand. But you start with the understanding of human nature through these great books. And they didn't necessarily have to be like the Bible or religious texts. They could be anything from just what is revered, what can we get lessons out of, since he believed they all kind of were a little bit of a folklore. Anyway, in the 1940s, while he was still president of the school, he became kind of under attack a little bit. They said that kids were learning, a student came back and said he was learning communism from the school. And although the president was anti-communism, he still supported his faculty. He said that it was important that teachers had academic freedom to teach what they wanted. But the way that he wanted his college to be set up was a lot of Socratic seminars and discussions. And so it's not necessarily just lecturing and you listen. This kind of brings us to a quote of his. He says, "It must be remembered that the purpose of education is not to fill the minds of students with facts, but is to teach them how to think." So he was very focused on really helping kids learn from themselves. So in this class, if there was a teacher teaching communism, he believed that some of the students should be able to stand up and say, well, this is why I don't believe that. And it should allow people to see all sides of the story, not just one side of an argument. So in the 1950s, he ended up leaving, being a college professor or college president, and he decided to go to a foundation, and then he started his own foundation. It was called the Center for the Study of Democratic Institutions. And in this foundation, they studied how academics and education changes in every country and how it really affects the society and culture. How does it affect the developing world, and does it really make a difference? So the later years of his life were really spent on educational philosophy, and he wrote a few books, one being The University of the Utopian, another Education of Freedom, and third, The Gateway to the Great Books. So another thing I actually found interesting about his time at the university, though, is at the college, he actually allowed them in the 1940s to help with the Manhattan Project. So a lot of the research was done at Chicago University. He believed that his college should be open to all sorts of studies, and I think his quote just kind of sums up what he believes. So thank you for listening.